400 people danced themselves to death in the middle of a city in broad daylight while doctors watched and prescribed more dancing. This is not a legend. This is not a myth. This happened in a city called Strasbourg, and a woman named Frau Troffea who stepped out of her front door and started something that would not stop for 2 months. July 14th, 1518. Strasbourg is waking up. The bakers are lighting their ovens. Merchants are setting up stalls along the river. Children are already running through the narrow cobblestone streets before the sun has fully risen. It is, by every measure, a completely ordinary morning. And then the door of a house on Rue des Grands Arcades opens. A woman steps out. Her name is Frau Troffea. She is in her 30s. She is the wife of a textile merchant. She has lived on this street her entire adult life. She looks up at the sky for a moment, and then she starts to dance, not joyfully, not to music, just dancing. Arms moving, feet moving, eyes fixed on something nobody else can see. Her neighbors stop and stare. One of them calls out to her. She does not respond. Another one laughs, assuming she has lost her mind for a moment or had too much wine at breakfast. Her husband, Heinrich, comes running out of the house behind her. He grabs her arm. She pulls away and keeps dancing. By midday, she is still dancing. By sunset, she is still dancing. Her feet are bleeding. Her shoes have worn through at the soles. Her breathing is ragged and desperate, but she cannot stop, or she will not stop. The records do not make that distinction clear. And by the end of that first night, Frau Troffea has been dancing for 17 hours straight, and whatever is inside her is about to get out. Day 4. Frau Troffea is still dancing. She has barely slept. She has barely eaten. Her ankles are so swollen she can barely stand on, but still her feet keep moving. And then, on day 4, something changes. A woman who lives 2 streets away steps into the road and starts dancing. Then a man from the market square. Then a young girl, or maybe 15 years old, who had been watching from a window. Within a week of Frau Troffea's first step, 15 people are dancing. None of them chose to start. None of them can choose to stop. Their faces are not the faces of people having fun. They are the faces of people trapped inside their own bodies, screaming, crying, praying, hands still clasped together, still moving, still dancing. By the end of the second week, 50 people, mothers, fathers, children, elderly men who can barely walk, all of them dancing through the streets of Strasbourg, all of them bleeding, all of them desperate. By the end of the month, 400 people, 400 people, dancing through the streets of a medieval European city, unable to stop, unable to explain why. And somewhere in that crowd is Frau Troffea, still dancing. She has been dancing for 3 weeks now. Her face, according to one witness account, has changed. She no longer looks frightened. She no longer looks in pain. She looks somewhere else, like she is watching something the rest of the city cannot see. The City Council of Strasbourg calls an emergency meeting. 12 of the most powerful men in the city sit around a long oak table. Outside the council chamber walls, they can hear it, the endless shuffling of feet on cobblestones, the gasping, the weeping, the occasional scream. They have 400 citizens dancing themselves apart in the streets, and not a single one of them has any idea what to do. So they do what powerful men have always done when they have no idea what is happening. They call the doctors. The physicians of Strasbourg arrive. They examine the dancers with great seriousness. They consult their medical text. They confer in low, grave voices, and then they deliver their official diagnosis. Hot blood, too much heat in the body, causing involuntary movement. That is their conclusion. The council leans forward. What is the cure? The doctors clear their throats. More dancing. If the patients dance it completely out of their system, or the physicians reason, they will eventually stop. The council nods. This is medieval medicine at its absolute finest. So the city of Strasbourg, with the full authority of its government and its medical establishment, hires musicians, builds a wooden stage in the town square, ropes off an area so the dancers have more room to move, and stations able-bodied men around the crowd, whose one job is to catch the dancers when they collapse, prop them back up, and keep them moving. The city has just built a machine designed to dance people to death, and they called it a cure. The deaths begin in the 3rd week. A man who has been dancing for 11 days collapses in the town square. He does not get up. Then a woman then an elderly man, then, most horribly, a child. Heart attacks from exhaustion, strokes from dehydration, bodies simply shutting down, organ by organ, after days of non-stop movement with no food, no sleep, no rest. And the musicians keep playing because those are their instructions. Historians who have studied the original city records estimate that at the peak of the Strasbourg dancing plague, 15 people were dying every single day from dancing. The musicians kept playing, the city kept the stage open, the doctors kept prescribing more dancing because nobody, not a single person in authority, had the courage to admit that they had no idea what was happening. And somewhere in the crowd, still moving, still dancing, was Frau Troffea. Week 4 now, the woman who started all of this, still going. The city records note that she was eventually, quietly, taken to a shrine outside the city walls, a place called St. Vitus. Whether she survived the journey, the record does not say. Her name appears once more in a document dated August 1518, and then never again. Now, stop. Because everything I have told you so far, and the dancing, the deaths, the doctors, the stage, that is the part of this story that occasionally gets mentioned in history books. What does not get mentioned is this. The Strasbourg dancing plague of 1518 was not a one-time event. It was not even unusual. In 1374, 144 years before Strasbourg, the exact same thing happened along the Rhine River in Germany and the Netherlands. Hundreds of people, uncontrollable dancing, deaths, no explanation, multiple cities, simultaneously. In 1237, in Erfurt, Germany, a group of children danced uncontrollably from one town to the next. Some collapsed on the road, some never recovered. In 1278, 200 people danced on a bridge over the River Meuse in Germany. The bridge collapsed under their weight. Most of them drowned. Historians have now documented at least 7 separate outbreaks. 7. Same region of Europe, same symptoms, same inability to stop, spanning 300 years, which means this was not a single strange event in a single strange summer. This was something that kept coming back, something that moved through communities like a disease, but left no virus, no bacteria, no physical cause that any doctor, then or now, has ever been able to identify. 7 outbreaks, hundreds of deaths, and not a single satisfying answer. Imagine waking up on a Tuesday morning in Strasbourg in 1518. You eat the bread your wife baked the night before. You do not know that the rye flour it was made from is infected with a fungus called ergot. You do not know that ergot, when consumed, causes powerful hallucinations, muscle convulsions, and a sensation of burning in the limbs. You do not know that you have essentially just eaten a medieval version of LSD. The poor of Strasbourg ate rye bread every single day. The wealthy ate wheat bread, and almost none of the wealthy citizens of Strasbourg joined the dancing. September of 1518, it stopped. Not gradually, not one by one. It just stopped. The dancers stopped dancing. The musicians packed away their instruments. The city council quietly dismantled the stage, and Strasbourg went back to its life. No official explanation was ever given. No record was kept of how many total people died. The survivors did not speak publicly about what they experienced. It was as if the entire city made a silent agreement to never mention it again, and for centuries they mostly succeeded. The dancing plague of Strasbourg was buried in local archives, mentioned in 3 obscure academic papers in 400 years, almost entirely forgotten, until researchers started pulling the documents, until the records started telling their story again. And that is when they found it, buried in a footnote, in a physician's account dated August 1518. A detail so strange that the researcher who found it included it at the very end of his paper, almost as if he was not sure he should include it at all. The physician had interviewed survivors of the dancing plague, people who had danced for days or weeks and somehow survived. He asked them what it felt like. He asked them if they had been in pain. He asked them if they had been aware of what was happening to them. And several of them told him the same thing. They said that at a certain point, after the pain stopped, after the fear stopped, after everything human in them had been danced away, there was something else. Something they could not name. Something they did not want to name. The physician noted in his report that when he looked at the faces of the people still dancing at the height of the plague, some of them were smiling. Not the smile of happiness, not the smile of someone who has lost their mind, the smile of someone who has found something. We do not know what Frau Troffea found. We do not know if she survived. We do not know what moved through the streets of Strasbourg in the summer of 1518 and took 400 people with it. We just know that it was real, and we know that it was not the last time, and we know that somewhere in that physician's footnote, a woman who had been dancing for weeks looked up at him and smiled. The dancing plague of Strasbourg remains one of the most documented and least understood events in human history. John Waller, the historian who spent years pulling these records back into the light, published his analysis in 2009. It is one of the most unsettling pieces of academic writing you will ever read, because Waller, a careful, rigorous, evidence-based historian, ends his paper with a conclusion that no scientist is ever supposed to write. He writes that after years of research, the honest answer is that we do not fully know. I want to know one thing from you in the comments right now. Which theory do you think explains what happened in Strasbourg? The poisoned bread, the broken minds, or something else entirely? Because next week, we are going somewhere even darker. A story that was buried by an entire government for over 60 years, because the people who knew what happened decided the world was not ready to hear it. Subscribe, and we will find out together.